Shalom and welcome to the next video in our series on making your Passover Seder meaningful and joyous this year. And we come now to Tzafun, which is better known as the Afikomen portion of the Seder. The Afikomen is actually in some ways a misnomer. The tradition emerges from ancient times. Afikomen is not a Hebrew word, as you might be able to tell. It's actually a Greek word, and it probably means dessert. And the idea was that you shouldn't have an afikomen after you eat the Korban Pesach, after you eat the Paschal offering, that the Paschal offering should be the last taste that you have in your mouth at the Seder, and you shouldn't eat dessert of some sort on top of it. Of course, today, we no longer offer or eat the Korban Pesach. We no longer eat a Paschal lamb on Passover. And so instead, the rabbinic tradition makes matzah the symbolic food that is meant to be the taste of Passover, such that there really shouldn't be any taste in our mouths at the Passover Seder after we eat the matzah. And so since we've eaten matzah actually before the meal, the rabbinic innovation at the Seder is to reserve some of the matzah for the end of the meal, so that can be the last taste in our mouths at the end of the Seder. We don't have an afikomen after it. But of course, many of us call that piece of matzah today the afikomen, and many of us have a tradition of hiding it, and the children can go and find it and then hold it for ransom at the end of the meal, because they know that the grown-ups can't finish the meal until this is the last thing they eat at the Seder. In my house growing up, we had that tradition of all the children going and searching for the afikomen, and it's a valuable item, of course, because we can't finish the Seder without it. At my grandparents' Seder, all of us kids would search for the afikomen, and my grandfather would give everyone a prize regardless of who found it. His lesson for us was that a sincere search is every bit as valuable as the actual finding. To seek honestly, regardless of discovery, is to be rewarded. And I also say about the afikomen in my book, 30 Days of Liberation, about this piece of matzah that's hidden at the beginning of the Seder, known as the afikomen, that it must be the last thing we eat at the Seder. So before the evening concludes, we must find it. Similarly, many of us hide at least a piece of our authentic selves. Sometimes we're even hidden from ourselves. Usually this hiding first happens at a very early stage in our lives. We felt a parent or other similar figure disapproved of an aspect of our authentic selves. So we bury it away to protect ourselves from the pain of rejection. But none of us can flourish, and many of us indeed suffer, until we uncover what was hidden and reclaim who we are, most of all, for ourselves. So the afikomen at the Seder is in some sense symbolic of that hidden part of ourselves that we discover and uncover and make once again part of ourselves to become whole and therefore to be liberated at the Passover Seder. There's no blessing for the afikomen. It's just customary for everybody to take a piece of it and to eat it perhaps as the last food item that we consume at the Seder. Of course, there are 2 more cups of wine after the meal and after the afikomen, so it won't be the very last taste that you have in your mouth, but nevertheless, even as the matzah is not a particularly sweet food, eating it and remembering the meaning of the afikomen and the joy of Passover's past, present, and God willing future will hopefully make this taste of the afikomen sweet as dessert in your mouth. Shalom.